Well, howdy, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. We have an interesting comment here today to go over. Sometimes, I drink coffee and I go back to sleep for 30 minutes. After that nap, I'm good. So it takes about 15 to 30 minutes for it to fully block those receptors for me. So what they're talking about, it means caffeine. And then receptors are referring to the adenosine receptors. I've talked about that before. I'll pop up a previous video here talking about caffeine and the adenosine receptors. So reading that, first of all, I thought to myself, well, if I have an energy drink, for example, I just drank this Ghost sour pink lemonade, which is one of my favorite flavors for Ghost. I really like the sour flavor stuff. I'm not going to be able to go take a nap. Because after I drink it, I'm going to be anticipating that, man, I'm going to be wired here soon. So I guess I found that interesting that they're able to do that. I guess, hey, whatever works for them. But then I thought, let's do an episode talking about factors that can impact how long it takes for caffeine's effects to materialize. How long does it take for us to feel those effects of caffeine after ingesting it? So we're going to go over 3 today. Now, these are not the only 3 factors. These are just ones that I read about. I'm always doing research, and I thought these would be interesting to provide to you all. So the first factor is the route of administration. How are we taking in the caffeine? So if we're drinking an energy drink, all right, or we're drinking a pre-workout, shameless plug, this is SMB pre-workout. This is my pre-workout that I developed. I used to sell it. I no longer sell it. But just as an aside, I got plenty of bottles. So if any of you out there want a free bottle, hit me up. I'll be happy to send it out to you. All I ask in return is you either tell me what you thought of it, preferably post something to social media, tag me in it, whether you like it or you hate it. Just let me know. I want you just to be honest about it. But you're ingesting it by mouth. You're doing something where it's going through the digestive system. I just saw the other day where it's like Cliff Bar is making a bar now that has caffeine in it. So that's an example of something that we have to eat or drink, all right? The amount of time that it would take for that caffeine to enter into systemic and circulation into our blood system, our circulatory system, it's going to be longer than it would if you're chewing a caffeine gum or you have a caffeine mint, all right? Because the caffeine gum and the mint, even though, yeah, you're going to be swallowing the sweeteners and then also the caffeine, and so it's going to have to go through to the digestive system as well. Some of it is going to be absorbed buccally, so the buccal is your gum, is in between the gum and the teeth there, like where someone would have like dip, if they're dipping. But there's blood vessels there that would take the caffeine right directly into the bloodstream, so then you're bypassing the digestive system. Potentially it could be sublingual absorption as well, so underneath the tongue. So a gum or a mint could be faster. I was reading in an article that they've actually developed a caffeine mouthwash. So you're using the mouthwash, but it's got caffeine in it. Now, the issue with that is the time of exposure of the mouthwash is not very long, so you're probably not going to get really that much caffeine if you're swishing it in your mouth for 30 seconds to a minute over like chewing a gum or a mint or something. But there's also other forms of administration of caffeine. There's intravenous caffeine, so you would see it like in a hospital setting where you're getting it via IV. There's inhalable form of caffeine that could be due to like respiratory issues. You would have to inhale caffeine. Again, you're bypassing the digestive system, so the time that it takes to get into the bloodstream and then eventually the caffeine would go through the blood-brain barrier and then into your brain is going to be faster than if you're eating it. All right. So that's one thing to consider, is how the caffeine is being administered. The vast majority of people watching this, all right, unless you're going to the hospital or doing something you shouldn't be, caffeine buy. If you get my drift, I'm not going to talk about here because I don't want to get banned or something for promoting something you shouldn't be doing, which I am not. I am not promoting it, but that is a form of that people do use caffeine, if you get my drift. Most people are going to be, drinking an energy drink or coffee or tea or something like that, or chewing a gum. All right. Second is, well, it's related to what we were talking about, drinking coffee, tea, or an energy drink. Second is, if you have food on your stomach, if you're taking caffeine on an empty stomach, if you have food in your stomach, all right. So if you're drinking an energy drink with your pre-workout meal, so you're drinking it with, drinking it and eating oatmeal or something at the same time, then that's going to slow down the time that it takes for caffeine to get into your blood. All right. Especially if you're consuming something that has a lot of fiber and or fat, because it's going to slow down digestion. So if you think about it, you're consuming the caffeine, whatever, your SMB pre-workout, which, by the way, you can get a free bottle of it if you let me know. Just throwing it out there. I got a lot of bottles, folks, that I really don't want to keep anymore. They're all sealed. They're protected from the environment, everything. But just trying to get rid of the inventory. So trying to help you out with some free pre-workout, folks. All right. Nothing in return, only a review. But we're consuming the caffeine. It's got to go into our stomach, then into the intestines, and the small intestine's got to be absorbed to get into circulation, etc. It's got to go through the liver, which, there's things I read where it really doesn't have a first pass metabolism, means the liver doesn't break it down, but it's got to go through that in order to get through into the systemic circulation, to go to our body eventually, to get to our brain, where it gives us that euphoria and wakefulness feeling. All right. Well, if you have a lot of food on your stomach, especially if there's fiber and fat that slows down digestion, it's going to slow down the gastric emptying, the amount of food that can go from the stomach into the intestines, including your energy drink or your coffee or tea, whatever. It's going to slow that down. So it's going to take longer to get the effects of caffeine. Now, potentially, you could feel the stimulatory effects of caffeine for a longer period of time, because you may be getting more of a steady flow of that caffeine as it's emptying out of the stomach, going into the intestines, and then getting into the bloodstream, potentially. But that's something to consider. If you want the fastest time or the least amount of time for it to take effect and the biggest punch from the caffeine, take it on an empty stomach. All right. Drink your SMB pre-workout on an empty stomach. That's going to give you the best effect, in my opinion. So the third factor that can affect the caffeine is drugs and substances. Now, when I say drugs, I'm talking about like prescription drugs. So some antidepressants can impact caffeine's metabolism. If you are taking or using nicotine will actually speed up the metabolism of caffeine. So it will reduce its half-life. So you won't feel the effects of caffeine for as long as if you were not using nicotine. On the opposite side, if you're using birth control and estrogen-based birth control, it increases the half-life of caffeine. So you could potentially feel the effects of caffeine longer. It takes longer for your body to metabolize caffeine if you're using an estrogen-based contraception. All right. So again, you have to discuss it with your doctor. All right. Because this, when doctors ask you about, like, are you using any supplements or any, other medication, it's vitally important you give them everything, because all this stuff could be interacting. Even if it's a supplement, it could still interact negatively with any drugs that you are taking, any medications that you're prescribed. So always be honest with your doctor. Okay. But yeah, that was basically the three different factors that I wanted to go over briefly on this to give a reply to their statement. I just thought it was very, very interesting. There's just things to consider when, taking an energy drink or chewing caffeine gum or, a pre-workout, etc. So yeah, I hope that you found that beneficial. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, whatever. Let me know if you agree, disagree. You think I'm wrong? Hey, let me know, folks. Again, I'm told I'm wrong all the time, so I'm used to it. Nothing gets under my skin. All right, I've heard it all, folks. If you look like me, you've heard it all throughout my life. All right, so I appreciate the time y'all took to listen or watch this video. And until next time, ask me for some SMB pre-workout. I'll be happy to send some to you. Take care, folks. Adios. Bye-bye.